Well, hello, and welcome to the AzureWell podcast. I'm Susan Booth, and I'm here today with Dr. Alphonzo Monzo. He's a biblical naturopath doctor, and we're going to be talking about men's and women's health today. So, Dr. Monzo, I think this is a subject that should apply to everyone, and it's important to all of us. And so, what do you have for us today?
Yes. Well, hello, and thanks for having me again.
Mhm.
Yeah, interesting topic here. Men and women's health. So we kind of named this one Balance to Your Life Cycle, since everything works on cycles. And I think that's the key word for this topic is balance. We want to bring balance to these areas in life and not necessarily do other things like forcing them to do something they're not supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
So, yeah, going to be an interesting topic. So I guess we can get right into it.
Love it. Yeah.
Um, So what we're going to do is we're going to cover the basics of men and women's health, and this could be a huge topic because there's multiple systems that could be involved when you're talking about men's health, women's health, and obviously it could be very, very detailed. We could have a whole uh, episode just for men and one just for women, and or maybe just one on prostate health or one just on breast health or something like that. So we're going to be really basic today. General issues with men and women. What are some of the causal issues related to unhealthy men and women's health? Lifestyle tips, and of course, AzureWell supplements that can help. So that's basically our outline for today.
Nice.
Now, when we get into men and women's health, if we get to the next slide here, you will see that uh, this is basically made up of two major systems, the reproductive system and the endocrine system. But now there's many others involved that are interrelated. And that's why it can become a really big topic. And so we've decided we don't really want to get into all the details of both of these systems today because we could just do a whole episode on the endocrine system as well because that's very large. So when we get to reproductive system, you will see that here, what is it? Well, in living organisms, like we are an organism, and so in humans, mainly when we say reproductive system, we're talking about the genitalial system, which is the biological system that's involved in sexual reproduction. Now, that's not the only thing that's part of the reproductive system, because the reproductive system also has a lot of fluids and hormones, which gets more into the endocrine side, and pheromones that go along with it that react on different organs of the body. And so that kind of moves us into the, well, one more thing I was going to say there is, so in this system, there's different words used. Obviously, everyone knows men and women are different. And reproductive system is when you find out that men and women are different and we don't have the same parts and they're different. So a lot of times there are different names used at genitalia. Like sometimes things are referred to generically, like gonads doesn't necessarily refer to one or the other. It kind of refers to both. And or urogenital system is kind of another word that people use that kind of throw around that's not, you could say, gender specific, which all of these topics today are quite touchy in the environment we're living in, unfortunately. But it's pretty simple. You can basically figure out what you are really easy by looking down there. That's all I'll say about that. Now, if we move on to the next slide, we're going to see the endocrine system. And the endocrine system, even though the reproductive system is pretty vast, the endocrine system could be equally just as vast because the endocrine system is really a messenger system of the body. So when we look at the body as in messenger systems, there's all kinds of them. We have messenger systems that are purely energetic. We have messenger systems in the body that are chemical based. So the endocrine system is one of the chemical based systems of communication. So we can communicate via chemicals through hormones and that's what the endocrine system is. But we also have neurotransmitters, we have nerve impulses. So there's a lot of different systems that get more into like the neurological system and things like that. But in the endocrine system, it's a system of communication via hormones, and the hormones are the communicators that are sent out from different organs and or glands in the body. Usually in the endocrine system, it's glands, and then they travel through the circuitorial system and they get to different targeted organs or glands. Now, this all works on a feedback loop, so meaning the body is sending information via hormones to a targeted gland or organ, and then a message is sent back, usually to the master system of the body, which they used to call the pituitary, or they still do. They call the pituitary gland the master gland of the endocrine system. But the hypothalamus is called the master of the master gland. Who knows? I guess what happened is they originally thought the pituitary was the master, and then they found out that the hypothalamus controls the master, and they were like, what do we do now? We'll call it the master of the master.
Funny.
So in your anatomy physiology books, that's what you get. The hypothalamus is the master of the master gland. And so the hypothalamus regulates a lot of the pituitary. The pituitary is the gland that actually makes the majority of your hormones and then sends them out throughout the body to the targeted endocrine glands. And the endocrine glands, usually from the top down, are like your hypothalamus is in the brain, the pituitary, your pineal is in the brain, and then you have a thymus, you have a thyroid. There are some glands that share, and that's why when we get to the next slide, we're going to get into the idea that there's interrelated systems. So when we get down a little bit lower, you have a pancreas, and I think the spleen, and then you have your adrenals, you have your gonads. These are all parts of the endocrine system. But the nervous system and the urinary system, the digestive system, hepatic system, all these other systems are interrelated. So some of these endocrine glands we were talking about in the brain, like the hypothalamus and the pituitary, even the pineal gland, often are referred to as neuroendocrine glands, because not only are they involved in the hormone production or hormone control, but they're also sometimes involved in neurotransmitters and what we would also call peptides. There are master peptide hormone regulating, or they call them peptide regulating hormones oftentimes, but they're actually more classified as a peptide that regulates and controls a lot of the hormones. So this would be the neuroendocrine system. So now the nervous system kind of gets brought into this. It's interrelated. And the same thing with all these other systems here listed. I mentioned the pancreas. The pancreas is technically considered a gland in the endocrine system. But the pancreas is also part of your hepatic system and your digestive system, because it helps with breaking down fats, makes a lot of the enzymes your body has. And more on a hormone issue, it's related to a lot of things with sugar control, insulin, all these kind of things. So the pancreas has dual action. And I think the spleen is kind of that way too. I think the spleen could really be classified as an endocrine gland and part of the immune system, which we talked about. Was that last month? The part number 4. Number 4 was the immune system, and we talked about the spleen in there. So that's why you have these interrelated organs, and that could make men's and women's health really long if we went into each one of these glands. I mean, we could have a whole discussion just on thyroid or the adrenals, or maybe a whole topic on the hypothalamus. But it is important for people to know that the hypothalamus is the master gland. And I think the hypothalamus, pituitary are probably some of the organs of the body or glands that are oftentimes just overlooked in definitely the medical field, but probably even in the holistic health field. Usually because there's not very good tests for these type of things, unless you're doing some type of energetic testing where you can actually get some kind of measurement on these glands. But a lot of times, we don't have a good test to find out how is that specific gland or organ functioning. And a lot of companies don't really make products too much for these systems unless you get into glandulars. Oftentimes, when it comes to the hypothalamus or the pituitary, you will find glandulars. And so right now, Azure has products that use mainly what we would call adaptogens that would help. But I don't think Azure really has a product specifically for the hypothalamus or the pituitary yet. But
Well,
that's
and as a consumer, someone who's using these,
Mhm.
you don't usually, I mean, we'll find lung support, sinus support, but hypothalamus support. When is that needed, and what kind of symptoms do you have when you need hypothalamus support? And I think that kind of education isn't quite there yet. Maybe we can help with that with this one.
Yes. And because since it's the master gland, as you can imagine, it could be related to tons of things.
Mhm.
So most likely, the average person would never know if they're actually having a hypothalamus problem or a pituitary problem, unless you can find a practitioner who's actually able to test some of those things. In fact, your a lot of your blood work for hormones can be misleading because a lot of stuff we test for with thyroid health, usually they're testing T3 and T4 and TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Well, guess what releases the thyroid stimulating hormone? Well, it's actually the pituitary. So it's very interesting in blood work. A lot of doctors are looking at TSH to figure out how your thyroid is working, but it's not released by the thyroid. It's released by the pituitary. So wouldn't that more indicate a problem with the pituitary? So I think that's what gets difficult with products like this, and probably why a lot of companies don't have products, because the consumer probably would never know when they need it unless they were actually tested by someone who could tell them what it is. So now when we get into what are some common symptoms or problems that men and women have, here's a list of concerns specifically for men: prostate, hormones, and sexual. And so you can think of probably 1,000 different things that could be a problem for men and for women, and it's probably going to fit somewhere in one of these categories. Now, for women, it's hormone issues again. So that's a lot of the endocrine glands that we were just talking about, sexual issues, breast health, menstrual cycle. Here we're getting into the cycles of life. And then body weight seems to be a big one. Although I think men have just as big a problem with that these days. Although I think there's probably more pressure on women to look good than men. I don't think men really care most of the time. And it seems like, I don't know, maybe women aren't as picky or they don't express it as much. But the majority of, I guess, the shame and guilt is put on women to be the ones that look really good. So body weight seems to be more of a concern for women. Although in our today's society, I think people who are overweight, both sexes. So everything you could probably think of as far as a problem with the endocrine system or the reproductive system could probably fit in one of these categories. So very simple, very basic. So just sexual health itself, sexual issues you can think of, there's probably a number of things that could go just into that category: desire, performance, etc. And then, of course, with women, we have the breast and the menstrual cycle, which is a little bit different than the men. And those are big topics just because there's such an issue today with breast cancers. And what are we going to do in these situations? Usually the options medically are not very good. And then, of course, menstrual cycles, which also gets into premenopause and menopause and all those type of issues. So those are the causal issues. The next thing we're going to talk about is, well, those are common concerns.
Mhm. And I heard that in other countries, and I think I heard this mostly like through the Weston Price in his studies when he went around, that other parts of the world that are not as advanced as we are, that their women don't have as much trouble with menopausal symptoms and PMS and menstrual cycle symptoms. And so what's different about Western civilization living, what makes it so that we do have more problems with that? And so I think that's where what you bring to this about, nutrition and the lifestyle, what is it that we're doing here that's different than other places that seem less advanced?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that is a major concern today, right?
Mhm.
We spend more money than any other country on medicine, or at least what we call medicine.
Mhm.
Yet we're one of the sickest countries in the world now. At one point, we were one of the healthiest. And a lot of that came to our founders when they came over here, believed very strongly on relying on nature and relying on what God created and sanitation. And because of sanitation and because of relying on what the Creator provided, we became a very healthy nation. And somewhere along the line, I think we got deceived into thinking that now we have modern science and now we have modern medicine, and it's the best science in the world. And the truth of the reality is a lot of it is just scientism. It's not actual science. And it's been heavily influenced by money, power, greed, and just a lot of deception out there.
Mhm.
And the bottom line really is not whether or not people are healthy. The bottom line is money. And that always corrupts everything. So now we're using and spending more money on drugs than any country, but we're not healthier.
Mhm.
But look what we've done to our food supply. We've basically destroyed the soil. We've destroyed our food supply. So we don't have the nutrients and the things that we used to have. And now we're very heavily reliant on synthetic pharmaceutical drugs
Mhm.
and then a modern lifestyle that's not really reliant on nature and reliant on what God created, but more on um, bigger and better things.
Mhm.
So we have more toxins, more stress, more EMFs, more synthetics all around us.
Mhm. And how do we know which ones of those things or several of them are affecting things like PMS or,
Yep.
difficult periods or whatever? It's yeah, when you have all those lots of factors, wow, it's a lot to consider.
Yeah, and right now in our country, I see we seem to be seeing a shift right now with a lot of this type of these type of topics coming to the forefront with what's going on with the election and everything. You have Robert Kennedy Jr. joining Trump, and he's been out speaking. So a lot of his podcasts have been out there now, and people are listening to what he has to say about the state of where our health is in this country. And there's been other people now, big name doctors who are coming out saying, hey, our medical system just isn't working. And what they taught us in medical school was almost nothing about nutrition. So we really don't know anything about nutrition. So you really shouldn't ask the doctors. And what about the use of all these pharmaceutical drugs and all these toxic chemicals in the environment, pesticides? And we have these things like phytoestrogens, which we're going to talk a little bit about that today. There's all kinds of different names for them. When I was in school, they called them photoestrogens, which meaning faux being fake, so fake estrogens. So products out there that are very chemically, they look very close to the hormone estrogen. And so today they have different names. And so they're like estrogen uh, manipulators, intimidators, or mimickers.
Mhm.
And so they mimic estrogen in the body. The body tries to use it like it's estrogen, but it doesn't. And it can really mess up all your hormones.
Mm.
And so we have a lot of products in the environment now that causes this, a lot of the synthetic plastics and things. And those uh, types of products not only affect women, but men. Because in women, when you get a lot of this junk estrogen in the body, that's not real estrogen, then that's going to lower things like progesterone, which is not good, because you don't want your estrogen being too high and progesterone being low. But in men, it can help, or it doesn't help, but it causes testosterone to go lower sometimes.
Mhm.
So it's a problem for both men and women. And that's why Azure actually has a product that we're going to talk about later that's specifically helpful for these junk estrogens. But if you look at the top causes on the screen here, you're going to see number one, of course, the diatribe every week, the nutritional deficiencies. Because of our diet, we're not getting the full 90 essential nutrients. And, the diet is just not where it is because we've destroyed the soil. And I do have to give some props to Robert Kennedy Jr. on one of his latest shows. I thought he gave one of the best answers to the environment question. And instead of answering it in many ways that he could have, he answered it from a very biblical perspective. And he said, well, the reason why the environment is so important to us is because when we destroy the environment, we're destroying the very thing that connects us to God. And it's the soil and it's the environment, it's creation that connects us with our creator. And when we destroy that, we're destroying that connection. And I thought, wow, what a great statement. He could have went a lot of different ways with that politically, but he chose that statement. So I was very impressed with that. But that is true. So that brings up number two here, toxins in the environment, what we've done to the soil and what's currently happening with things being sprayed and things being thrown away. And I mean, even the fact that people are flushing pharmaceutical drugs down the toilet, and those chemicals then get into the environment and can get back into our drinking water. So the environment is very toxic, and toxins are at the top of the list in naturopathic medicine. Number one is always nutritional deficiencies, and then number two is always look at toxins, because toxins start interfering with everything in the body. Then the next one is mental emotional stress. And I think we mentioned this one almost every time too, because it's related to almost everything. So the statistics out there, especially when we're talking about traumas when you are developing. So when you're a child and you're in your development years and there's major traumas, they say almost 80% of our health problems today go back to childhood traumas. And they have a whole thing called the ACE score, where you can take this test to see how many of the different traumas listed on this test you have to see what level of stress could be currently still affecting your health. And just the environment we have today, very stressful, very fast paced, all kinds of deadlines and limits. And then we have financial stress and all those other things. And that can have a big impact on the body and hormones, because where are a lot of the hormones produced? In the brain. And of course, if we have all kinds of mental emotional stress, then as the Bible says, as a man thinketh, so he is. There is a mind-body connection, and there's a brain-gut connection. And so the way that we're thinking has a direct impact on the body. And even medically, they can measure this to a certain percentage, and they call it the placebo. And there's a certain percentage, they say it's 20%. So what you believe is 20% of what actually happens to the body. Isn't that interesting? And then the last one here is movement and lifestyle. And movement is so important because it's a great stress reliever. And also we need to be moving so things can be pumped throughout the body and moving throughout the body. And since the hormone system is a circuitorial system to some degree, in that these hormones have to be circulated, they have to be flowing through the body. Whenever we stop moving, everything stops moving. So that's very important. On the next slide, we get more into the 90 essential nutrients are necessary for proper hormone production. Minerals are extremely important. Different people will have different expressions on this. Some people call them the sparks or the spark plug. And the minerals are what you really need. And even if we were to look at the body from an energetic perspective, with actual electromagnetic energy systems of the body, what do those systems need for things to happen physically? Well, minerals. And when you think of minerals, just like computers or anything else, minerals come from the soil. Oftentimes, when they're in an inorganic state, they are coming from rocks or crystal or something like that. And then they get broken down with the soil, with the microbes into the plant and become organically bound minerals. So a lot of these would also be kind of classified as metals. So the very things that we use to make all of our electronics. So, in electronics, a lot of the metals and minerals are used for the electricity and things. So it's very interesting how minerals are a vital point in all of this. Specifically, copper, very important for a lot of hormone function in the body. And the other one we really should talk about, I forget if it's in the next slide. No, I think it's here. Eventually, I talk about the fats and how important fats are also. And part of the 90 essential nutrients there's 3 essential fatty acids that the body needs. And all of our hormones are made from cholesterol. There's that word again, cholesterol, which is a form of fat.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think happens when you're on drugs that reduce your cholesterol? Not good. So a lot of the brain needs cholesterol. Your hormones need cholesterol. So we need healthy fats. We need the minerals. And there's a number of vitamins also that help with the endocrine system and the reproductive systems. The next slide is basically a call to return to balance. So here's a perspective of the difference between modern medicine and natural healthcare when it comes to men and women's health. In modern medicine, it's a lot of replace the hormones. All right, your hormones are too low or they're too high. So what are we going to do? We're going to either suppress them or replace them with synthetic hormones or what we call bioidentical hormones. Now, are they really identical? Well, they're no, because they didn't really come from a human. Usually bioidentical hormones come from animals that are closely related to humans and are supposedly a little bit better than synthetic hormones. But the question is, should we really be replacing our body with hormones? Or should we be supporting our hormones in natural healthcare? So in natural healthcare, we want to use things that are naturally occurring that are going to help support the body to make its own hormones. Because that's what we want the body doing, is making its own according to its life cycle. And there are life cycles. So there are times in life when we make more hormones and when we make less hormones. That's part of the natural progression of life. So this idea that we're too high or too low might not necessarily be true all the time. Maybe we're just right. Maybe the amount of testosterone my body makes is what my body's supposed to make. And if it is too low, is that because it doesn't have the nutrients required to make them? Is that because we're missing something from nature that's supposed to be in our diet that would actually help our body make the hormones? So we're going to support the body by providing natural substances, vitamins, minerals, and herbals that are going to support the body to make its own. And another key point here on this one is a lot of times, if you're only replacing the hormones, remember the body has this feedback loop, right? We talked about that on the endocrine part. The feedback loop is where the body is receiving feedback from itself on how these things are functioning. And if you're just giving the body hormones, the feedback is, well, we don't need it anymore. So the body is never motivated to make its own. And sometimes if you're on replacement hormones for too long, or the other thing that really should be mentioned here also that I just thought of, it just popped in my mind, was the birth control. Birth control is very damaging to women. And of course, obviously, birth control is for only one primary reason, and that is so you don't get pregnant. However, many people might be shocked to find out that birth control is a primary go-to in modern medicine for balancing hormones for young women, whether or not they're using it for actual birth control.
That's right.
But those drugs really mess up the body's hormone system because it's suppressing what's supposed to be a natural function of the body. And if you're on them for too long, and this includes replacement hormones, a lot of times the body becomes dormant and just stops doing what it's supposed to do. And then you have a longer journey of trying to get that kicked back in gear and get the body to remake that stuff again.
Yeah, it thinks it has enough. It thinks it has enough, so why should it go to the effort to do it? And when that goes on for too long, then it's kind of stuck where it has to have it from the outside because it's not doing it itself anymore.
Yep. We see that a lot, especially for, all the hormones, but it happens even with the thyroid, where people are on thyroid replacement hormones, and then it's really hard to get the thyroid to start working on its own. And a lot of that, again, comes back to the hypothalamus and the pituitary, because that's where a lot of those hormones are actually made.
Well, there's some things like that they tell you, well, you're going to be on this for the rest of your life, not expecting that you might just want to see if you can get off of those hormones, because that's kind of our goal. We want to have the body do what it's supposed to on its own and without drugs, because even if those drugs are beneficial for a time, if we can get off of them and have the body be in balance by itself, it sure helps.
Yes. And there was one other thing I was going to mention, but let me just move on to this next one here. So you see the next category is synthetic substances versus naturally occurring minerals and nutrients. The next one down is they try to force the body versus encouraging the body. And one is more focused on symptom management. And in natural healthcare, we're more interested in what is the root cause, right? And what I was going to say is, the other thing about this is it's oftentimes in natural healthcare, we call it holistic. So in modern medicine, it's very compartmentalized. And now today we have specialties in everything. So you have endocrinologists who specialize just in thyroid health. Well, that sounds great, but remember our podcast number 1, we talked about the ceruloplasmin and how important it is. And I think in that one, I mentioned that a lot of your T3 is actually made in the liver. So one of the very hormones that runs the thyroid, a lot of it is actually produced in the liver. So then you can see this interrelated aspect of how the body really is holistic. It's all the parts of the body working together. And being isolated and more compartmentalized isn't always a good thing, because you can know a lot of stuff about the thyroid specifically, but if you don't know how the thyroid relates to your liver and the hypothalamus and the pituitary, well, you could be missing something.
Well, like you were talking about how the different organ systems, they work together. And I think that by calling them a system, it's just a way for us to better understand how they work together, but it's more how we're trying to fit it into our understanding. So that we can say, okay, this is an endocrine issue, when really you're right. It's connected to everything else. It's all interconnected, and part of these systems is just what we've chosen to identify them so that we can talk about them as a group.
Yeah. Most of it, anatomy, physiology, and probably even pathology today, biology, it's just really man-made organization where we have tried to organize the body and systematize it and put it into nice little block boxes so we can, okay, we're going to talk about this. But one of the key principles for people to understand in natural healthcare, and I could have put this one on the screen, I didn't, is, well, I did say that, they're all about symptom management, managing the symptoms, and we're root cause. Well, another way to think about that is not just symptom management, but in modern medicine, they're treating symptoms with a specific drug or chemical. In holistic healthcare, natural healthcare, we're treating the person. Okay, we're not treating a disease, we're not treating a symptom. We're actually really treating the whole person.
Mhm.
And because it's your body, it's your innate wisdom that the creator gave and created and put in your body that is going to allow the body to heal itself. The body heals itself when you give it what it needs. And I don't know how we get deceived into thinking that's not true. Even modern medicine knows to a basic level that if you cut yourself, what happens? Well, your
First of
body
all, you bleed.
begins, yeah, your body begins to heal itself. But
Mhm.
somehow we're convinced that, well, if you cut yourself, your skin can heal itself, but your liver can't, and your adrenals can't, and your thyroid can't. Nothing else in your body can heal itself. Only your skin. It's like, wait a minute. Well, we know that's not true now, too.
Mhm.
So, a very weird way of looking at the body when we compartmentalize it and we don't actually treat the person as a person.
Mhm.
It's their body, and their body is going to respond. And that's why we always have to find out what are you going to respond to the best? What substance does your body need from nature to kick it into gear so it can do what it does best, which is restore itself,
Right.
bringing balance back.
Mhm.
So the next slide, we actually start getting into supplements. So what does AzureWell have for hormone balance? Well, for everybody, there's the diatribe of the 90 essential nutrients. So if you want your 90 essential nutrients, you can do the whole food multi, the Islamic cod liver oil, and the fulvic humeric mineral blend. And that will basically provide your 90 essential nutrients. Now, if you want a little bit additional support nutritionally, adding the copper, which is really important for hormones and nerves and connective tissue, and then the adrenal food for stress reduction. That's what you can do on a very basic, generic level for addressing the nutritional needs that your body might need. So this is just, usually the 90 essential nutrients is probably going to cover 80% of problems just by giving your body all the nutrients it needs. And then whatever is left over is where we have to get specific to the person. Now, the next slide gets a little bit more specific. So now we're going to run into hormone balance for everybody. And then we're going to get into specific for men and women. But for everybody, both men and women, these three products will help both genders. The first one's called men's and women's estrogen balance. So this is what we were talking about, what I refer to as the faux estrogens, or the um, sometimes they call them photoestrogens, as in chemical, fake estrogen that we're getting from the environment. And one of the things that really helps balance out those junk estrogens in the body is something called DIM. And that comes from cruciferous vegetables. And so this product has a lot of those in there, sometimes a lot of times broccoli and other things. And then, so this product is a great product for balancing and supporting estrogen metabolism. And it also the synthesis of 2-hydroxyestrogen. So basically, this is a product that's going to help men and women, kind of like I already explained, because when you get those junk estrogens in your body that are mimicking estrogen, they're going to throw your other hormones off balance. For women, a lot of times it's the progesterone. For men, it's the testosterone. So it's going to cause all kinds of interference in your endocrine system.
So
So this is a
maybe
product
you
to help balance it.
could you speak to the idea that men might be afraid to take a supplement that says estrogen balance on it? Because even though we know that the male body has estrogen in it, that, when it's running properly, it's gonna have some, but I suspect, and I think we've, done a little market study to find out that men are kind of afraid to buy a supplement that says estrogen balance and something that is for men and women. What would you say to men that are, like, afraid to take this one? Because I'm sure that's not for me.
Yeah. Well, they shouldn't be afraid. And so basically, it's what you said. Uh, Men and women both have basically the same hormones. That might surprise a lot of people. The difference is the ratios. So obviously, men usually are much higher in testosterone than women, and women are much higher in estrogen than men. And typically, that's the reason why men have more masculine characteristics and women have more feminine characteristics. But what we need to understand is this is estrogen balance, and it's whole food, herbal based, plant based. So this is not giving your body estrogen. This is not replacement hormones. In fact, none of these three products on the screen are actually replacement hormones. They're actually giving you things from plants that help balance the hormones. So the problem in our environment is, for the men to understand, is you're getting estrogen, junk estrogen, whether you like it or not. And this might be the reason why we see a decline in masculinity in our country, and a lot more of the femininity is because you're getting junk estrogen from the environment. So if you want to get that out and boost your testosterone, this is a product you're going to want. You're going to want to balance that and get your estrogen levels in a level and a ratio where they're supposed to be, lower in the body, not being artificially increased by junk estrogen. So, you, unfortunately,
good
it's kind of like the
explanation.
opposite here. They're afraid because of the name, but they're afraid of the very thing that's really going to help them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? And so this is not going to be a product that forces your body into increasing estrogen in the body. No, it's going to bring estrogen to a proper balance to where it's supposed to be in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot
And
of
the
that is
DIM
by getting rid of the junk stuff.
and the DIM has been, scientifically studied to help with that. And, it shows that it can get rid of that junk estrogen, like you're calling it. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And yeah, that's about it for that one. That's a great one. I think actually I might be on it right now myself. I think not long ago I tested for it and I was like, yeah, probably all this stuff in the environment, I probably need to take some of that right now.
Mm-hmm.
DHEA from wild yam. So again, we're not giving you a synthetic hormone of DHEA. DHEA is considered a hormone, but this is actually a natural version that comes from wild yam. So it's going to help support the aging process. It's going to provide optimal hormone support, mood stabilization, and a holistic emotional welfare. So when we get into this idea of the mental emotional stress that's involved in hormones, here we go. And DHEA is kind of a precursor to a lot of your other hormones. So that's why when you have a natural form of DHEA that comes from plant-based source, as in the wild yam, that's going to help the body with everything with hormones, because you're getting the precursors that the body needs to use to turn into the other hormones. Hope that makes sense. And then you have the adrenal food. And adrenal food is for stress mainly, but it has the whole food C, it has the potassium, it has the sea salt. It's going to be very powerful for the adrenals. It's going to be very powerful for that ceruloplasmin. And because of that, it's going to help a lot with the liver. It's going to help a lot with hormones, because I would say it's going to help hormones secondarily because of its effect on all these other organs. And one of the top endocrine glands that almost everybody's stressed in is the adrenals themselves, because they deal with all the stress and the cortisol levels that are getting ramped up because of the stress we're under. So adrenal food, great one for men and women. So a little bit there to get rid of the junk estrogen, one for giving you the precursor to a lot of your hormones, and the last one really for more of the mental emotional stress. Any questions on those?
Sounds good.
All right, well, the next one here, we're moving into hormone balance for men. So for men, you have Azure has 3 specific products. Men's pro adaptogen, you have a prostate support, and testosterone support for men. Now, the last two I think are pretty self-explanatory, but the first one, what is pro adaptogen? So a lot of people might not know. There are herbals out there that are called adaptogens. And what these do is these are herbs that help your body to adapt. And they're very powerful because they don't force your body in any one direction, okay, which is really beneficial. Unlike a bioidentical hormone or hormone replacement therapy, where we're forcing the body in a specific direction by giving you the hormone, an adaptogen is going to bring your body back into balance. If something's too high, it brings it down. If something's too low, it brings it up. So exactly what we want to do in balancing the body again. Like I said, the key word for this whole podcast is really balance, balance of the life cycles. So adaptogens are great ways to balance the body's hormones. So these are, there's herbal botanicals in here, and I think there's some vitamins and minerals in here as well that basically helps balance the hormones. So is it going to help balance the testosterone? Yes. Is it going to help libido and duration and satisfaction? Yes, because it's going to help balance all those male hormones. Not just testosterone, but men have estrogen, men have progesterone, just very little amounts compared to women. So it's going to bring the ones up we're supposed to have up and bring the ones down that are supposed to be brought down. Now, technically, this product probably could be used for women, but you really don't necessarily need it because we have one for women specifically. But the herbals that are in this one are more specific for men. But since they're adaptogens, it wouldn't really hurt men or women because they don't force the body.
Nice.
You might just not see much of a benefit. Now, prostate support, pretty self-explanatory. Prostate function. And this is something that happens for a lot of men, especially as they get older. We start having prostate problems, and that can affect urinary issues. It can affect sexual health. It can affect all kinds of stuff. The urinary flow, waking up at night, going to the bathroom all the time. So this prostate formula has the saw palmetto, probably one of the top formulas, herbal formulas for the prostate for men. But it also has 6 superfoods in it. So it has all kinds of things in there that's not going to just help the prostate, but urinary flow and a lot of hormone balance as well. And then you have testosterone support for men. Well, this one, again, is people have to understand that this is not testosterone. It's testosterone support for men. So a lot of times people mistakenly think we're giving you testosterone in this product. No, this product doesn't actually contain testosterone. It's, again, herbals that help balance and increase the level of testosterone in the body. So these are different herbals and plant-based sources that help promote the body to make more testosterone. So, of course, that's going to support men's sexual vitality and desire. A lot of times when desire decreases in men, it's because the testosterone is decreasing. Usually why men have a stronger sex drive than women usually is because men have testosterone. And women have testosterone too, but women have a less than men. So another misnomer from women, a lot of times women think they don't need any testosterone or they don't have any, but they do. And oftentimes women can be too low, and maybe that's a reason why they don't have sexual desire. And that's why adaptogens are always great to use for men and women, because they help balance these hormones. And of course, it also says on here, helps common symptoms related to male menopause. So there is a such thing. Well, that's andropause, but there is a such thing for men kind of going through this, maybe more withdrawn and I was going to say something, maybe I won't say it. I was going to say caveman behavior. Everyone knows men like their man cave. And so sometimes this happens too later in life when hormones are out of balance. So that's what we have for the men. What about the women? Any questions there?
No, I think you're right. These things could all be their own subject. Just the whole thing of prostate and the difficulties with that. And there's a lot of prostate cancer these days. There's also the urinary consequences when the prostate is swollen. So, yeah, some of these things we could do an entire podcast on just the one subject.
I think that will be something we eventually do. Otherwise, we're going to run out of things to talk about.
No way.
Hormone balance for women. Okay, well, we have three great formulas here. The women's feminine balance, women's radiant strength, and adrenaline adaptogen. So women's feminine balance. So this one is more designed to support the healthy menstrual cycle and cycle regularity. So thinking of menstrual cycles, obviously it says on there menopause. Menopause is going to be related because it's related to the cycles. And of course, it eases occasional and minor discomfort from PMS. So everything related to the cycles and menopause, menstruation, this is the product you're going to want to help balance those cycles of life out. The next one is women's radiant strength. So this one is more for sexual function in women. So obviously, that is a great concern for women. In relationships, men usually have higher sex drive because of the testosterone. Women usually have a little bit lower sex drive. And as women get older, sometimes the sex drive diminishes more. Sometimes it's not even if you're old. Sometimes it just greatly diminishes because the hormones and the cycles are out of line and out of balance. So promoting better sexual desire and function, this is one of those products women can go to help improve in those things. Now, because of some of the herbals and products in here, it also may relieve menopause and menstrual health issues. The other thing that it's really good for is mood equilibrium. So balancing out mood as it relates to your cycles and sexual desire and all that kind of stuff. So very important product. And then, of course, the last one is almost like adrenal food, but different. This is technically a product for the adrenals, but it's also an adaptogen formula. And that's how it's different than adrenal food. Adrenal food is food that you need for the adrenals to work right. This one is adaptogens that help balance adrenal function. And since they're adaptogens, they're actually going to cover more than just the adrenal glands. They're going to help balance a lot of hormones in the body, more specifically for the adrenals and for vitality. Really good for mental, emotional, physical burnout and stress. And then this product also has fermented mushrooms, cordyceps in it, which helps with endurance and immune system. And so this is a really great product for women when you're dealing more with the mental, emotional issues and stress and all the things in life that help burn it out. I mean, most women today need some type of adrenal support because of the stress in life and raising kids. And kids couldn't be the greatest stress in your life sometimes. The greatest blessing and the greatest stress, those kids. You don't know if you love them or want to kill them some days. So this is a great product to help with that burnout with dealing with all those type of situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a particular time in life when you have children that you need to take care of and your parents and grandparents that you're trying to take care of, and you're trying to juggle all that with, other work and school and things at your church. And it just, there's a particular time in life where it seems like that stress just ramps up, and it's probably not at the right time for, making sure your hormone balance and all this stuff. It's just that stress is difficult. So yeah,
Yes.
sounds like balance and adaptogens are kind of the name of the game here to a certain degree.
Yes, they are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's it for men and women's health.
Well, at least that's what we're going to cover today. And so,
That's
yes,
right.
if we can do another one on the endocrine system specifically a little later on, and dive into some of these in more detail. So, yeah, looking forward to talking about these more in future podcasts. But thank you, Dr. Monzo. This has been really
You're welcome.
good.
Thank you.